Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me and Meera. She'll be here soon for Where I'm From number 32. As always, what are you reading? I just finished The Body Papers by Grace Tallison. It's really good. Um, Emotional. I'm going to post about it tomorrow. She covered so much territory. And I'm also reading Genderqueer. Here comes Pride Month. Hi, Meera.
Hi, Alyson.
That was very easy. We did a good job.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm always kind of nervous to get on these things because I'm never sure if I'll get them right. But,
Yes,
I prep for it.
people are nervous, and I've done it now enough times that I know that sometimes it goes wrong, sometimes it goes right.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. Whatever is
Yeah.
okay. Um, it's good to meet you.
Yeah, I know. I know.
I
I
feel like I
follow
know
your
you.
work. I know exactly. I follow your work too.
Yeah, and I love all your flash pieces, as I'm sure people on here do. They're so beautifully insightful, and you do it in so few words, and that is such a skill to be able to communicate that much depth in so few words. It's really, I'm always impressed.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for sharing my work too.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm happy to share it. It speaks to me, and I always, well, these poems, it's the same thing. It's like the more specific we get, right, the more universal it is. It feels counterintuitive, but
Yeah. I
I
cannot believe you got me to write a poem. I've never written
I
poetry before.
did it. I was determined. I feel like you would be a natural, and it's a beautiful poem. Is there anything you want to say before you read it?
Um, it was just a really nice exercise in memory because I've moved so many places. I grew up in India, but even in India, I moved around a lot. I went to boarding school when I was very young. And then my family moved to Canada when in 2012, so about 10 years ago, and I moved to the United States eventually. And it's just that it brought back so many memories, and the prompt was so it evoked so many beautiful, you know, I don't know, senses of places. It was
Mhm.
just really, really, it was really nice. And since I've never written poetry before, and since I've never really kind of ventured into the landscape of poetry and kind of got a sense, it was nice to get a sense of, oh, okay, this is how I put lines together. This is how,
Mhm.
the imagery comes together. This is how people feel through poetry, and it was really nice. So thank you for that.
Well, I think it's a really rich prompt. I felt similarly. It was like, because I am not a poet, I think it's very ironic that I get people here to share poetry as if I'm not an expert. Um, but I think there's some freedom in that. Like, I'm not an expert, so you can come join me. And I appreciate all the sensory prompts
Yeah, it,
because
it is so rich in sensory detail. This one, and I enjoyed listening to all of the other previous wonderful writers you've had on here, and yeah, um,
I've been very fortunate. I
I
it's
feel very fortunate to be here too.
I think it just speaks to that people do want to be heard, right?
Yeah,
We want to share our stories, and we want people to hear them. And I think it's the most basic. I just posted something in my story, how difficult it can be to connect. Like, we oftentimes we're communicating with people, but they're not hearing us. They're not connecting with us, and that is its own kind of loneliness.
yeah,
Um, and it's a painful kind of loneliness, and has been for me many times in my life, where I'm in a situation where I feel like, oh, we're supposed to be connecting, like we're the same whatever, type of person, and we're not.
yeah.
um
I
so
feel
I
like,
think, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
I just think that connection, it feels like, I just read a book recently talking about, where we put our focus and our energy, and how important that is, not in like a woo woo way, which I also agree with, but in like an actual practical applic- applicant application way, that where we put our attention, that's like our resource that we all have, regardless of our backgrounds. We all have our own focus and energy, and where we put it shapes our life.
Yeah. And I think I like what you said about not being, the essence of not being understood. This prompt has like so many, it's such, it just opens so many doors. And I love that about it. So I
Okay,
really hope,
we're
I
excited to
hope
hear it.
it's a way. I hope it's a way to whoever's listening in today that they feel like someone else, even though we are all in different parts of the world, that they can, they feel that they're not alone when they listen to um, writing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the big hope for sure. Um, okay, Meera, I'm excited. I know other people are too. They're ready. So whenever
Okay,
you're
so
ready.
I've got it on my iPad. Let me read it. Okay, here goes. I'm from the pages of old journals, from Bona and black ink. I'm from wooden floors filled with toys and baby clothes. Lemony, fragrant, I can't quite explain why this is. I'm from jasmines, pine trees, sweet leaves that hold morning dew. I'm from Diwali dinners and unbridled joy. From Malu and Macomb. I'm from the kind of loyal you don't find anymore, the kind of love that's deeper than the ocean. From don't waste your food and pay attention. I'm from the sound of temple bells and the Saturday choir. I'm from the backwater breeze that whispers to wet coastal earth. From soft white rice topped with lentils and mango pickles so hot it burns your tongue. I'm from all the books that my grandmother read when she had no one, and the little blue lines under words that spoke to her. I'm from the scent of her dreams. Thank you.
Aw, the little blue lines. I I love that. I love that when we feel the communication of the people before us in like surprising ways, it feels magical. And I feel like that tapped into that feeling of,
Yeah, especially
like
when books are handed to you, right? Like when I open an old book which belongs to some aunt or like somebody who's left the book behind, and books speak to you. I love seeing whether it's a pencil or a pen, like stuff they've underlined, stuff that's spoken to them. It also happens when you go to secondhand bookstores.
mm-hmm,
Always picked up a book that's been loved before, and then you're like, oh, those words speak to me too. Yeah.
mm-hmm. I know, and it's a certain, yeah, I read somewhere someone who was goes to secondhand shops and then tries to reunite like objects that they feel have been maybe sold in error, like by people who didn't know what they were, and then we'll sometimes try to reunite people
Yeah.
with those things. And how objects have a history, because sometimes I feel overwhelmed with the thingness of life. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
why are there so many things, and I don't want so many things.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that there are things that have meaning, because I think sometimes I can err so far the other direction. Like, we don't need any of this. It's good to have that
Yeah.
reminder that these things do carry history. And love as deep as the ocean. That's really beautiful that you feel that way about your family. I think it's a gift.
It is, and I feel like it's a kind of a. I mean, I think people from the diaspora, people from immigrant communities, you know, it's just a very complex thing because you don't often feel love in the sense that you see it in the movies. It's not always wonderful and happy, and it's not that kind of love. Sometimes love is a lot of pain, and you you carry forward you always carry forward stories of the people who come before you. You always carry forward their lessons, you carry forward their memories, and one of the ways that's carried forward is through books. And for me it was a huge thing because my mother's line, I get my love for reading from my mother, and she gets it from her mother, and she gets it from her mother. My great grandma passed away actually quite recently, And what was really interesting to me was in her last days, she was still reading books. She was still reading children's books. And when I went to see her in 2018, it was so interesting because she told me of a time when women weren't really encouraged to go to study,
Mm-hmm.
further and so on. And what she talked to me about the books that made her feel less alone, and that actually stuck with me. That stuck with me because I'm a mom now, and
Yes.
I spend a lot of time alone. And there's a lot of different types of loneliness one feels,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
And you take a book, and sometimes you feel like, hey, there's someone else who wrote this who feels the same way, and you feel less alone. And when I
Mm-hmm.
write essays, that's how I feel. I
Mm-hmm.
I try to do it to kind of understand myself more.
Mm-hmm.
And this is such a great platform because that's what we're doing right now.
I think speaking of loneliness, the loneliness of being the mother of young children or the parent, it's a very specific loneliness. And a lot of people are starting to talk about sort of this rage and anger, but for me it was not so fiery as that. It was I don't feel like I had my brain the
Yeah.
way that I did before I had kids. And I was like, oh, this is my life now. I'm not ever going to feel like I did before, but I did, but I
I
do.
know.
So I want to give you hope if you're in that place. Like, speaking of reading, like, I just couldn't pick up certain books that I would have definitely read before I had children. I just would look at it and think, oh, no way, I
Oh,
can't read
yeah.
that. I can't
Yeah.
read that because I felt so raw on one level, but also my brain was just like pew pew, not not firing in the
Not
same way that
much.
it had,
Yeah.
and I remember when my youngest child was 4 or 5, I was like, oh, I can have like big ideas again. I really just felt a lot of, and I love being a mother. I mean, it's a source of great joy to me. But I just was like, oh, okay, I guess I don't do that anymore. And so when it came back to me, I felt like I had renewed appreciation for how much I like to think and consider and read and write, and but how much joy those things have brought me. And I like hearing that your great grandmother was still reading because I would like to think I will be similar. Because books have
Yeah.
been always great company for me, and have opened up the world for me. And because I mean, the stuff we read in school was not my thing. So I was so
Not me
grateful.
either.
I was
I'm like,
like,
what am I reading in school? Like, none of this means anything to me.
who are these guys? And why
Who
do I
are
need
these
to read
people?
them?
Why am
And
I
I'm sure, I
memorizing?
mean, you probably felt, I'm guessing, even more intensely like, I am white, I am of European descent. I should maybe care about this, but I don't. And it's interesting. I started reading like literature from the diaspora and immigrant literature, and that was some of the first literature that I really felt I related to. That feeling of not um, having a home,
Hmm.
even though I live in a place that supposedly is home. But the more we think about it, I think, and the more we deconstruct the United States, this isn't where I'm from,
Right.
my people. Um, And I think that we feel that deep down in our genetics. Like, epigenetics is real. And I think I was feeling a sense of displacement, even though it's, you know,
Yeah.
generations.
Yeah.
And also just sort of, like, life is hard to negotiate.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times I just didn't relate to the larger, like, sort of white guy narratives about what they were grappling with. That didn't feel like what I was grappling with. So I'm just grateful for books and
I'm
words.
grateful for books, and I'm grateful for writers who kind of write all kinds of stories, really,
Right?
because I mean, talking about I grew up in a very post-colonial environment, so all the books that we read. I mean, we were memorizing Shakespeare in like eighth grade, and it had to mean something, and it didn't really mean much to me then.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not to say that reading Shakespeare was bad, but there was no connection there.
No.
And it took me such a long time. It took me at least about a few years into college that
Mm-hmm.
I actually began to kind of read more writing that is not so influenced by writers in the UK, because
Right, for sure.
it was just so that was huge for me, because I felt a lot more understood, and like the word you used was displacement, and the word I sometimes felt was dislocation. I
Mm-hmm.
just felt like the pieces didn't fit. Like, these writers were there. I loved what they had to say, but through them, I was looking at a country that I've never been to. I was living a life I've never, like, they would never understand my life. The life I was living, the life that was in books was totally different. Um, and I think like my journey has always been to kind of read as widely, as extensively,
Mm-hmm.
and like kind of experience the world as differently as you possibly can through different kinds of writing. And that's actually been so helpful, and it's been so unique, because you never know that you might what someone in some part of the world,
Mm-hmm.
some different part of the world you've never been, has the
Mm-hmm.
same experience as you. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I feel like that was a more intimate
I agree. I
journey.
just read this book, The Body Papers, which is by a Filipino American, and I had that experience very much.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah.
I should check it out. The Body Papers. I
Yeah.
am reading.
It was on Tria. Tria's list? She did one for AANHPI month, like
Oh, really?
recommended
No, I haven't.
resources. Yeah, on Reader's Digest. And I'd read a lot of them and really enjoyed them. So I was like, okay, I gotta check out these because she's a writer and a poet. And so she's coming from that, and a memoirist, and she's coming from that space. And I was really, this book, it won the Restless Books Prize for a new immigrant writing, and it really was about her experiences. Like, one of the only, she talks about the experience of going to the Philippines because she immigrated when she was quite young, and being
Mm-hmm.
surrounded by people who looked like her, and
Mm-hmm.
how that's not something that ever happens to her in this country. And I've had other friends who are immigrants tell me similarly, like my friend who's Ethiopian went back to Ethiopia and she was like, oh my God, everyone here's Ethiopian. And this is
Yeah, and
surreal.
suddenly you don't have to explain yourself, right?
Yeah. And I love learning things. Like, of course she would feel that way, but it's not something I necessarily think about on a day-to-day basis. So it's just like, for me, reading these books, I relate to pieces of them, but I also learn things that someone's not going to tell me in conversation necessarily, or, in casual interactions. And I just feel like, um, I feel like the more we open ourselves to other people's experiences and experience compassion for those, like the more joyful I feel in my life, because I am not defending my position, but just understanding my position. And I think when we go out into the world with this sort of aggressive, like, defensiveness, it just is, it's toxic. And I think
Absolutely.
books can really change that, which is, of course, why everyone's banning them. But
I know.
because
I
I'm reading
cannot
like the
believe
most
some of the
banned
things
book.
that are happening.
This is the other book I'm reading, which is like the most banned book right now, Genderqueer.
Genderqueer. Okay.
And it's about to be Pride Month tomorrow. And I read it, and it's just the sweetest, like, most lovely, supportive book about someone's experience coming to realize how they identify and who they are, and the idea that you would like to ban somebody just learning to accept themselves. It's messed up. So,
It's really messed up.
but I was like, this is like the sweetest book. Like, it's just lovely. I don't understand. I mean, I do, but I don't.
I
And
mean, I cannot fathom that this is happening in the States. And for me, this is such a new thing, you know. It just, I keep thinking that people who are threatened by books have to be like, I really wonder where that fear comes from. I really wonder. Because if a book can move you to that place of absolute fear, um, you're living with a lot of pain, and you really have to confront that at some point, because it is not the writer, or it is not their words that is that is threatening you or your life in some way. It's just not. So
yes, if you're threatened by someone's words, that
threatened by
is
someone's words,
that
yes.
is teaching you or themselves about like acceptance, or because usually that's the books being banned, right?
Yeah,
Learning
the
to
books that are being banned.
learning to
Yeah.
accept yourself and history as it actually occurred, as opposed to how it's been rewritten. Um, yeah, I've read a lot of the banned books, and I'm gonna be on a friend's podcast, and she was like, "Which one do you want to talk about?" I said, "Well, banned books are really my thing because they're great books." Like, if it's on that list, it's powerful, right? Like, it's a powerful book.
Yeah.
So I'm in. But it was just like, so um, the power of words.
Power of words. Yeah.
Anything else you want to? I was just, it's so lovely speaking with you. I'm a fan. And also, I'm just, I'm grateful you're in the world and you're on social media sharing. I feel like social media can be this really powerful platform, right? Where people can share and connect. And I feel like you really embody that. So I just,
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, it's I wish I had lots to say, but for me it's like long. I'm the mom of a 3-month old right now.
I'm so
So
impressed that you
it's
are
I
able
do
to do
not know
anything.
the difference. I do not have a sense of time, and I write for exactly the same reason why possibly a lot of people write, to make sense of myself. And you talked a little bit about it. You didn't know who you were. For me, it was that loss of identity. There's something about becoming a parent that you lose that identity that you build over a long time in your 20s, and you're just like, oh, life hits you in the face, and you really kind of have to go through a process of self interrogation. And for me, I see writing is a process through which I do that. And so thank you for having me, and
Oh,
it was absolutely wonderful. And I
such
don't
a
know
joy.
how many people have joined today, but it was really.
There's lots of names. There's
I
lots of
know,
names
I
popping up.
know.
Um, so
It's
I tried to like see if there were questions, but I think people just joined and loved things and loved your poem and were excited to hear it. So I didn't want to ignore anyone who was saying something, but I think it was mostly just enthusiasm and support.
yeah, yeah.
So thanks to everyone who.
Oh,
Oh,
Ronan's
thank you
there. I
both.
see
Hi,
Ronan.
Roni. um, yeah, thanks to everyone who joined us, and thank you, Meera. We first started messaging about this like a while ago, and Meera
I know.
messaged me. I can't do it then. I'm due with a child, and I was
Yeah,
like, okay.
in
that's
February.
that's the best excuse ever. It was just you're like, sorry, I'm having a child. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's no problem. So I'm impressed you're doing this with a 3-month old. I was, especially with the first one, a wreck.
Yeah.
So I was just a wreck. So um, we don't talk about it enough.
We don't talk about it enough. This requires you to go on a podcast and talk about this with normal moms.
Yeah, that first year, Mia, whoa, with that first one, because also my father died, and I mean, it was a whole. And I find that happens to a lot of people. Like there is a loss with that birth, and
Yeah.
negotiating all of that is, you can't just go in a corner and like cry anymore. It doesn't work
There's no
that
time to
way.
cry.
I realized I unpacked some of it years later. I'm probably still, unpacking it. it's really something. My husband and I still talk about it. Like you are no longer the center of your own universe, and you can't prepare your brain or your heart for that. It just happens.
Really hard to explain to anybody who hasn't been through it. So I'm glad that
So true.
I'm glad that I'm understood by somebody.
You are.
The
You
first
definitely
person
are.
I talked to this week who's outside my family.
Oh, good. I'm here anytime. I just say you're doing great, and
Yeah.
whatever you're doing is amazing because I truly feel that way. And we don't have enough support in this country for parents, period.
Yeah.
And it's a missed opportunity because we miss out from these people's we miss out with these people's contributions because they don't have
Yeah.
the support they need. So um, I'm here anytime you want to text me to
You're
say
bringing
you're
back a
doing
lot
great.
of emotions of what I've been reading about.
To say you're doing great. I'm really impressed. Way to go. I
Yeah.
truly, I would like to be that for a lot of people. Just you're great. That's like whatever you're doing is amazing because it
Oh,
is hard.
it's hard. It's really hard. But
You will not
I'm so
always be
glad.
this exhausted, Meera. I can promise you that. You will not always be this physically exhausted.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that moment, where where I'm like,
It'll
can
be a
I
while.
sleep until 10 a.m. tonight? This
I
morning.
remember I would ask when my oldest was in preschool. I was like, I had a moment where right before I had my second one, and I took naps every time they were in preschool. And I would see parents, and I said, "Oh, now both your kids are in preschool. Do you like take a lot of naps?" That was always my first question. And they'd always look at me like I was a little bit not right, and in the head, like, "No, I have things to do. I can't just take naps." And I'm like, all I could think about was naps.
Yeah, yeah.
That was what I wanted more than anything was a nap.
All I wanted more than anything is quiet, but not the lingering loneliness kind of quiet. Just the quiet, which is like my mind is at peace kind of quiet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard, but kind of taking it on and seeing how it goes, right?
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
mean, you'll do it. You're doing it, and
doing
do.
it and have reading a lot of books on the way. So I'm it's a lot of people giving me company, although they're not here.
That's so true. That's a great
Thank you so
reminder.
much for having me today.
Oh, I'm so glad you could join me. It's been a real pleasure. And I'm so grateful for everyone who joined us and for your words and that
Yeah.
you're in the world doing what you're doing. So thank you, Meera. Thank you, everyone. We'll say goodbye.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining.
Yes.
Thanks, Alyson.
Bye.
Bye.